After the armistice in 1953,
Korea remains separated.
In Korea, it's a matter of how to end the war, in the way to obtain the peace.
We need to continue in international endeavors.
we believe in dialogue more than military solutions.
The tragedy of the Korean War must not be repeated.
A horror war never happens again on the Korean Peninsula.
I'm Juan CAIZA, ambassador of Colombia in Korea. 70 years after the Korean War, the Colombian population asked about the reason why Colombia participated in the war. The history say the answers. Our government received the invitation from UN June 27 of 1950. The government of Colombia took the decision to send troops to Korea in July 25. The objective is to support to Korea and to support two principles, the freedom and the democracy. In 1951, June 15, arrived to Busan 5,100 troops and 3 frigates. It was a tremendous experience to support the Korea country. One of the veterans, Gilberto Diaz, took the opportunity to take photos in the middle of the war. I would like to show you this first photo before to arrive to Korea. Here, this is a photo in the middle of the war. One photo with another veteran. These two photos, special photos in the training 2 months after arrive to Korea. This is one photo very special because you know Colombia, approx the majority of population is Catholic. This is a church in that truck, and you can check the soldiers in this special and flexible ceremony. It's very special. The Colombian troops participate in the Korean War around 3 years, but the more difficult and special combat was in 1953, between March 23 to 25. Colombian troops defended the point of Old Baldy. Old Baldy is very important because it's located in the middle of the conflict between the Korean troops and North Korean troops. Suddenly, the China troops attack to Colombia soldiers. the reality of that combat, basically 95 deaths, 97 injuries. In the case of China, troops, 369 deaths and 450 injuries.
Mi nombre es Pedro Hernando Vergara Hernández. Estuve en el frente de Old Boldy ingresando el 13 de marzo de 1953. El 23 de marzo se produjo el ataque frontal de los chinos y yo fui herido y así atendí al compañero Horacio Echeverría Restrepo, pero fui rescatado. Lo único que deseo es que para Corea, mi segunda patria, haya una paz duradera y que sea firmada lo antes posible.
After 70 years, Colombia and China now has a diplomatic relationship. In the past, obviously, we need to understand that was a very high difficult for two countries. But now we need to continue in the way to obtain the peace. And we continue to support to Korea to obtain the solution of this conflict. We believe the dialogue that began in 2018 and must continue. Must continue. Colombia always send a message to Korea that support all his process, and always we are ready to continue in this dynamic and continue to obtain the stabilization in the peninsula. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. Colombia and Korea have faced the pain left in their history by the violence and the war. However, through cooperation and solidarity, we have learned that only by working together we will be able to overcome the big challenges that face us. I would like to request for us to work together on those issues that bring us closer and that allows us to create better conditions for our peoples, without forgetting to remember the sacrifice of those who preceded us in a special way. Let us focus on what united us and accepted the different ways of thinking to avoid repeating painful events of history such as the Korean War.
Dongdaecheon has a special significance for the Norwegian participation in the Korean War. After first being in Uljongbu, it was here in Dongdaecheon that the Normash, the hospital, was for a 2-year period. It's a very nice monument, and the monument has a very special history because it was more or less lost in a flood in August in 1998, but it was found and moved to this location in 2000. And now we really enjoy very much coming here to this quiet and very beautiful place and to remember the terrible actions during the war, but they have done it here in a very beautiful area. I would like, on this occasion, to introduce you to a book that is very special on a day like this and in times like this. This is actually a Norwegian and a Korean edition of a book called Korea in Our Hearts. And this is a compilation of letters and descriptions and stories that were sent back to Norway from soldiers and the medical staff of the Norwegian Mobile Surgical Hospital that was here during the Korean War. This book contains many stories, one of those being from Mr. David Ranby, who was an electrician. And you would perhaps think that most of the people who were here were medical staff, and that's correct. But a hospital consists of many other important functions as well. And Mr. Ranby was a very important electrician at the hospital for a long period of time. And I would like to use this opportunity actually to read from the exact diary and the real diary that he wrote those dramatic years. De sårede fortsetter å strømme inn med ambulansebiler og helikoptere. Men det verste rushet er stilnet av. Men etter dundringen fra fronten å dømme er det fremdeles stor aktivitet. All day and into the night are worked in the operating room. It was the first time for me to help doctors who were performing surgery. Whew, people were right when they said anything was allowed during the war. When I opened up a patient's wound, the doctor took out bullets and other fragments. After taking out the bullets, the doctor performed surgery on a finger that looked as it would fall off. But when the doctor cut off the dangling finger, blood came out and onto my arm. The patient was from Spain. I thought he might be playing the guitar as a hobby. A guitar player who lost his finger. I couldn't help but feeling very sorry for him. It is a story about the war. It's a very dramatic book, but it's also a book that contains many warm stories. So it's a book about friendship, a friendship that has helped us build one of the strongest relations that we know, and that today makes the Republic of Korea one of Norway's most important partners in many, many areas. To try to give you perhaps a somewhat better impression of what life could be at Normash, I have some pictures as well that I would like to show you. Normash was under the American 8th Army and was a frontline hospital during the whole war. And during that period, it treated more than 90,000 patients in the frontline area. Of course, many soldiers from all countries, from the UN sending states, from Korea, but also from the opposing parties. And also treated many civilians, adults, children living in those very hardly affected areas. One special feature, which was quite interesting during those times, was the number of women serving at the Normash, both doctors, nurses, and other staff. I think there was the first female surgeon in Korea was at the Normash, Dr. Inge Skjulstad. Many of the pictures from the Normash are quite dramatic. It shows everyday life, how life could be in between the dramatic times when patients were coming in, the treatment of patients, how new treatment methods were developed, but also some very warm and nice pictures from how life could be on more normal and quiet days. One special thing that I would like to mention as well is the close relations that were built with the local population in the area around Dongdaecheon and where the hospital was at. The hospital treated many civilians as well and many children. And I think many pictures were with the civilian population and kids coming into the hospital area, obviously having a very nice and warm relation with the men and women of the Normash. A very large percentage of the Norwegian soldiers and the Norwegian medical staff who were here prolonged their stay, stayed on longer than they had to, and they even came back to Korea after the war. And a very important part of the story is that the Scandinavian countries remained in Korea for many years, together with the Korean authorities, built up an important part of the Korean healthcare system. Children tuberculosis hospitals, and not least the National Medical Center, a hospital very much active in Seoul even today. We owe the soldiers who fought during the Korean War much, but we also have very much to thank them for building a modern society that brings our countries together. Let me express my deep gratitude and appreciation to all those brave women and men, civilians and soldiers who fought in the Korean War, both from Korea and the UN sending states. Let us work together for peace to ensure that the horror war never happens again on the Korean Peninsula. So I think we have a responsibility to teach all people horrible acts of war and how important it is to avoid war in the future. That is extremely important, and we have to remember how terrible a war can be, and that all means necessary must be used, and dialogue is extremely important in order to avoid getting into a war-like situation again.
My name is Federico FAILLA. I'm the Italian ambassador to the Republic of Korea. At the breakout of the Korean War, Italy was not yet a member of the United Nations. So it did not participate to the United Nations mission that was dispatched to Korea in summer 1950. But since the war was ravaging the whole Korean peninsula, the International Red Cross asked for some humanitarian support to the Italian Red Cross. In this regard, the Italian government in January decided to organize a mission with the Ministry of Defense, and it was asked to the Italian Red Cross in August 1951 to send field hospital to Korea. And it was the concrete way for Italy to demonstrate the solidarity to the Korean people and to reaffirm the commitment to the mission of the United Nations about peacekeeping, in accordance with our constitution that at the Article 11 says that Italy rejects war as an instrument for, against the freedom of the peoples, as a means for the settlement of the international disputes. The field hospital was equipped with some clinic analysis test and some diagnostic radiological test. We made a video of the activities of the field hospital number 68 to convey to the future generations the solidarity of the Italian people to the Korean people in really hard times that were comparable to the hard times that Europeans experienced just a few years before during the Second World War. In hard times, solidarity should be the North Star for every country. When the unit left in October 1951 and arrived in Korea after 1 month, it landed in Busan. It was under the United Nations command, and was decided that this unit should be deployed in Seoul because it was close to 38th parallel where most of the battles were taking place. He treated wounded soldiers as well as performed surgical operation, not only on the military of both sides that were brought to the hospital, but also on civilians that were brought to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was a fire at the hospital at the end of 1952 in November. The building where the hospital was set took fire and was heavily damaged. Fortunately, no patients were affected and most of the equipment could be saved. But the building could not be used anymore before the reconstruction. So the hospital moved to Incheon and continued to treat patients as before. After the armistice in 1953, the hospital stayed in Korea to help the civilian people that were still affected by the consequence of the war or by other diseases. Korea deeply appreciated the Italian contribution in that period. And the then president of the Republic of Korea, Syngman Rhee, himself expressed the gratitude for this gesture of solidarity and for dedication of the Italian team of the Field Hospital 68 through a presidential unit citation. And apart from the official appreciation, there was also very important also the appreciation of common people as witnessed by this message of gratitude that was given by some Korean patients to the Italian team that was working at the Field Hospital 68. This is the location where the hospital number 68 from the Italian Red Cross was located during the Korean War from 1951 to 1954. Today is the Wushin Elementary School and has become a place where young generation Koreans are educated. At the Wushin Elementary School in Seoul, that hosted the Italian Red Cross Hospital, number 68, the first military unit with peacekeeping duties in the history of the Italian Republic to be employed abroad, the dedication of our military personnel and hospital staff testifies the strong bond of friendship between Italy and Korea and the common aspiration to achieve lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula, as in the rest of the world. There is a way of saying that more than others summarizes this strong bond, today as then. A friend in need is a friend indeed. The position of Italy has been always in favor of a dialogue. We believe in dialogue more than military solutions. In this regard, we wish for the two Koreas to talk without any precondition, but with the full respect of the UN resolutions.
The Korean War was an outburst of the Cold War. North Korea was part of the family of so-called socialist countries at the time. We were part at the time of the socialist camp. Relations were good. My name is Petko Draganov, and I'm the Bulgarian ambassador to South Korea. I was taught that the war was tragic, fratricide, and it was. Of course, at the time, we were taught that the South was the initiator of the war with American imperialists. And of course, the school books at the time had a certain ideological trend inscribed in them. But we understood the Cold War. When the Korean War broke out, that made front pages in the Bulgarian press, and almost immediately a decision was taken by the then communist government to assist the Korean people. A decision was taken to spend some 80 million leva, which must have been about the same as US dollars at the time. We must remember at the time Bulgaria had just gone through the scourge of World War II. So there was a lot of sympathy and a lot of solidarity and very strong anti-war mood in the population. So this mission enjoyed the full support of the Bulgarian people at the time. The first medical team, it was called a brigade, left Bulgaria in March 1952. That mission worked in Korea up until 1954, and then the second mission, which was of about 100 people, took over and stayed there up until 1956. The Bulgarian doctors were based in the northwestern part of Korea. They had to work in apparently difficult conditions at times, in dugouts under the surface. So these were field hospitals, military-style field hospitals, and more often than not, conditions were not perfect. We know there were bombings. We know of one victim. His name is Dr. Zakhary Donchev. He died near the town of Kusong, and he's the only victim of the Bulgarian mission that we know of. The Korean War was tragic in that there was a lot of victims, and many children were left orphans. So there was a decision to help in accepting Korean children who were orphaned, to offer them schooling and care. So about 500 children were brought to Bulgaria. They were all sent to 3 cities not far from the capital, and they would be sent to Bulgarian schools and have classes with Bulgarian children. There's a town called Prvomai, and if you go there, you will find some elderly Bulgarian women and men who remember their children and who can sing a song in Korean, and who unfortunately never had the chance to stay in contact with their childhood friends from Korea for obvious reasons. There were some people brought to Bulgaria for treatment from North Korea. And one of those soldiers married a Bulgarian lady. And their son is a university professor, Mr. Kamen Nam. He teaches geology in the Sofia University. Unfortunately, Professor Nam's father was brought back to North Korea and could never reunite with his family.
Позволете ми да ви се представя. Аз съм професор Камен Нам и съм един изключително обвързан човек с историята на Корея. И причината за това е войната. Войната, която раздели твърде много хора. Войната, която остави след себе си неизлечими следи на страдания. Аз безкрайно се гордея с него, въпреки че той принудително напусна нашата страна, България, когато бях на почти 3 години. Трудно беше. Вие сами разбирате, че да израсне едно дете сирак в онази форма, която казват умните глави, полусирак, е много по-страшно. Когато знаеш, че бащата е жив, а не можеш да го видиш. Искрено го желая. Искрено желая това обединение.
War is a man-made catastrophe and a failure of human reason. The only true tribute to the millions who lost their lives 70 years ago would be a long-term resolution of tensions on the Korean Peninsula through negotiations for denuclearization and dialogue for sustainable peace and integration. Bulgaria supports all efforts towards that noble goal.
My name is Piotr OSTAZZEWSKI. I'm ambassador of the Republic of Poland to the Republic of Korea. It was one of the biggest events during the Cold War. That time you had just newspapers and radio, or wireless, how you call it. And was monopolized by the communist government. Even the propaganda of that war was rather that was the war against the United States. So everyone expected in Poland that it would be probably the Third World War, so people were very scared about that. We were devastated by the Second World War, so we lost 6 million people. So we experienced very well on what does it really mean, a war. Discussions started in January 1953, when it was the first hospital, the first and the last one was sent in April 1953 and lasted through 1956. So that was a Medicare, of course, the first relief action, which was supported by this hospital as well as taught 360 Korean students on medical care. the prime medical care first of all. So it lasted 3 years. That was at the very beginning, but it was a military hospital which was turned into a civilian one in 1954. I should rather say that we have a description here in this book about the aid which was sent. But from a medical standpoint, there were only just 2 X-ray machines and some medicine dressing. Because, as I mentioned, it was impossible to send more because we were devastated by the Second World War. So we had really economic troubles, and we suffered from malnutrition as well. But the question is indeed that people wholeheartedly wanted to help the other components of our relief missions, which were sent just within a framework of aid, of economic aid. There were just some food, clothes, and just ordinary usage things. There were 2 groups of North Korean orphans. The first, which arrived in 1951, then you have a 200. Then in 1953, you have a 1,000 orphans. The first group was near Warsaw, about 35 kilometers from Warsaw. The second, and to the western part of Poland, near what is a town is called Wrocław. And we must remember one thing: they arrived in the time of the hardest, the darkest time of Stalinism in Poland. Of course, we were completely unaware of what was going on. People who just took care about them in Western Poland, they were relocated, many of them were relocated from a former Eastern Poland, because Wrocław was, before the Second World War, a German town. So, of course, we suffered from a shift of our borders. So, indeed, people took care voluntarily of the children, and they helped them a lot. What indeed happened is that they spent about 7 to 8 years of the groups. They didn't want to come back. And why they didn't want to come back? Because of the harsh conditions they were expected just to have in their own country. And they were treated very gently, and of course the people didn't want them to come back or to send back to Korea. But unfortunately, this is a fate. That's North Korean government took care about them, and they were supervised by North Korean government, so you couldn't beat it. Many of them wrote letters even to former so-called Polish parents. Indeed, they called them parents. One of them tried to escape North Korea, but he died in northern China. It's very hard to say what happened statistically, how many of them. We know more or less. Some of them were middle-level officials in North Korea. Some of them were sent to coal mines. So very harsh, very hard physical work. Armistice was signed in July 1953. At the very beginning, the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission had over 600 members. The North Korea selected Poland and Czechoslovakia from the former communist bloc, and the Switzerland and Sweden was selected by the United Nations. So we stationed on the northern side, and was completely neutral, writing reports every 3 or 4 months, and every weekly reports, of course, and they collected into bigger ones of the conclusions, as well as this side, and the exchanges of information between both sides of that. The abuse of armistice, as well, so, but let's say some statistics, but probably just in over 100,000 to my knowledge. But some people even claim that there were over 1 million of abuse of armistice agreement. In the case of when you have a small skirmishes and abuses, doesn't necessarily mean that you have a military conflict or something like that. But it's a permanent solution. I hope that finally that would be a peace accord between fighting, or between both sides. In 1993, Czechoslovakia suffered from a physical death of the state. What does it mean? So from a legal standpoint, of course, because that was divided into 2 different states, because it was a Czechoslovak Federation, Czech Republic and Slovakia. So therefore, it completely it was withdrawn from a membership of the committee, and in 1995 North Korea wanted the Polish side to leave the territory of North Korea. We are still the member of Neutral Nations Supervisory Committee, although our headquarters right now is in Warsaw, and our members are still the members of this committee together with Swiss and Swedish friends, and just meetings held every 3 months and exchange of information permanently. Well, we have our embassy in Pyongyang, but together with 24 countries, the other countries, plus 2 special cooperation offices, which is led by France and Switzerland. Our relations with North Korea are just like the same as relations of the other European countries, European Union countries and Asian countries and the other countries. We don't have any particular position within these relations. In Korea, it's a matter of how to end the war. Finally, how to sign a peace agreement, how to find let's say, a solution. But how to end the conflict, this is, I think, that it depends on both governments here, and they know much better than me the situation, and they can find a solution. What is, and it's always emphasized, is the dialogue, because without dialogue, you don't have any process. So even in diplomacy is very important, even when you have something like the process was slowed down, you have some points, you have something like some deeds even that you can decipher, not to read, but decipher what does it mean. So I think that they know very well how to decipher and what to do with it. We are a generation that fortunately does not know what does sacrifice of life mean. And we pray God we would never know. Therefore, all of us should put all our energy to build and maintain peace and peaceful coexistence between all the nations based on equality and respect for the rights. Polish nation, so much experienced by war, can share today together with our Korean friends fruits of peace. Both, we can today send a message to those who passed away during Korean War. Your sacrifices was not in vain, and you still live in our hearts and minds.
The negotiation for the Korean War Armistice Agreement began in December 1950 and proceeded with difficulty until July 27, 1953, when the agreement was finally made to hold a signing ceremony. The conditions of the agreement were to have a neutral nation supervisory commission, which I will further refer to as NNSC, that would regulate any attempt for the recurrence of war by both South and North Korea. The Czechoslovak contingent for the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission was meant to be self-sufficient. So on July 22, 1953, almost 300 Czechs and Slovaks, together with the whole equipment, including tens of army trucks, motorcycles, even 4 Tatraplan VIP limousines, passenger buses, ambulance vehicles, and 25 jeeps left from Prague to Panmunjom by rail. NNSC was composed from the 4 countries, and the main precondition was the neutrality. That means the country who was the participant in NNSC couldn't participate in Korean War. The South Korea nominated Switzerland and Sweden, while North Korea nominated Poland and Czechoslovakia. The main activity was actually made sure that there are no army supplies to neither of the countries, and there is no other activities which will be violating the armistice agreement. The NNSC was to establish 20 inspection teams, 5 located at the ports in South Korea and 5 located at the ports in North Korea. These were so-called fixed teams. In addition to those teams, there were 10 movable teams which were stationed near the headquarters of the NNSC, and they were ready to move the country whenever it was needed. The first meeting of NNSC took place on August 1st, 1953. There was the general feeling that the screening in South Korea was much more profound than it was in the North Korea, which obviously caused some frictions between South Korean people and the NNSC members from Poland and Czechoslovakia. So there were even some protests against the activities of the Czech, Slovak and Polish members. And finally it ended up that those fixed teams were recalled, and basically NNC was stationed just on the border and didn't move to the country anymore. But that was back in '56. It also depends on the overall historic context, how you view the activities, because on one hand, if you look at it from the perspective of the results, you might say that the Commission didn't raise any specific violation of the armistice. That's why it was inefficient. On the other hand, without the NNSC, there probably would not be a peace agreement. I think it was one of the preconditions of the armistice agreement, and it created some kind of mechanism between the countries not using the main world powers like United States or the Soviet Union or China at that time. Czech NNSC members left behind a variety of pictures while working for the NNSC. Thanks to these photographic endeavors, we can now share a lot of photographic materials documenting the life not only in the demilitarized zone, but also in Gaesong, in its vicinities, and all around Korea where NNSC members visited. This photo shows a North Korean soldier outside his guard post in a joint security area. Another picture which caught my attention, and unfortunately this is the quite sad picture, but it's showing the post-war reality, how destroyed the country was. I would like to show also some working photo, and you may recognize the Swedish and Swiss flag on the table. This is to document that in the meetings that was also, I would say, a little bit unusual for the members from the Czech Republic and Poland, because you have to realize that after the Second World War there were not really frequent contacts on a working level between the people from so-called Eastern Europe, former communist countries, and the free Europe. So this was one of the opportunities where people can, after the Second World War, work together. So when looking at the pictures, one can see that the war is not only frightening and destroys everything, but also the life starts and life continues among those rebels. Yeah, the process, peace process between two Koreas has its ups and downs. This was throughout history since the end of the war. Now, we've been witnessing very significant efforts to improve the situation recently. Unfortunately, the process between the Koreas is still confined within the frame of the big superpowers. So it will be very interesting to see the further development of the process. Obviously, we need to continue in international endeavors to employ multilateralism. But also, I think it will be very important to see how the North Korea itself develops in the future, because this might be one of the decisive factors for a really substantial change to peace. We can still learn lessons from the war and from its results. There are also memories of the great number of victims and material damage sustained in this war, and these memories should serve as a memento to preserve the world peace. Peace always comes at a price. The current happy life and prosperity of South Koreans show that the lives sacrificed in the war were not lost in vain.